It is a lovely Sunday afternoon. You are welcome to Robin Minds. I'm Osato Edokbayi, and what a week we've had. I mean, the obvious focus is on the Osun governorship elections just concluded, and with the incumbent Governor Ademola Adeleke being certified winner and returning elected by INEC. Of course, the focus will move now from who won to what Nigeria can learn from the election ahead of the 2027 general elections. Because Osun provides an opportunity to examine what worked, what didn't work, and what should be replicated or avoided when Nigerians head to the polls in 2027. Now, from the role of INEC and the performance of its technology to the conduct of political parties, security agencies, and of course, the voters who went out, the election offers several lessons that could shape the next national elections. And one of the strongest takeaways was the level of voter engagement, particularly young people who gathered at the INEC office and remained there through the night and into the counting of results. Their presence does speak to a growing understanding that casting a ballot may not be enough. See, voters also have a role to play in protecting the integrity of the process. At the same time, there were reported cases of vote buying, intimidation, thuggery, concerns around results, and glitches with IREV. And these highlight areas that must be addressed before next year. The question now is whether these lessons will actually translate into action. What should INEC replicate from Osun? What needs to be fixed before 2027? How can voter vigilance become part of the electoral template? What can political parties and security agencies learn? And most importantly, can Osun provide a workable blueprint for a more credible, transparent, and trusted 2027 general election? Joining me to discuss these and more, we have our guest today in studio, Martin Obono. He is the Executive Director of TAP Initiative. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
And joining us virtually, we have Justice Crack Chidebere. He's a human rights activist. Good afternoon, Justice.
Having me.
It's very good to have you here with us. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. There's obviously a lot to unpack. I'll start with you, Martin. You just in from Osun where the elections were concluded. The results were announced. Very interesting process so far. You were there for a number of days leading up to the election. And the thing I really want to hear from you as a man on the ground is your general assessment of what went down.
Thank you so much for having me. We literally just got into town from Osun because there was no flight from Ibadan. So we had to, back to Abuja, so we had to come into Lagos to get a flight later in the day to back to Abuja. Elections, pre-election assessments, there was a lot of violence in terms of the pre-election assessments that we have. You know, there were flashpoints here and there. Intimidation, harassment, there were killings in some areas. But like most elections, the election day itself was not, there were not violence like that, you know, except in maybe one or two places where there was also intimidation. But other forms of electoral malpractices were seen, you know, there was vote buying. They tried to also suppress voters here and there, but nothing major to essentially have an effect on the general outcome of the elections. There was no major either clash or form of violence or snatching of ballot boxes that would affect the general or overall outcome of the elections. So election day itself was relatively, generally peaceful, not relatively now. And people went about voting and ensuring that their votes counted. But one thing that I take out of the election is the fact that Nigerians in Osun, citizens and voters mobilized themselves and they ensured that those votes counted. Regardless of the kinds of things that happened there. You will see videos online that people rejected 50,000 that was given to voters in order to buy their vote so that they can vote for the APC, and I will say this unequivocally, that the APC wanted to buy votes. Even the driver that brought us to Abuja, to Lagos, was like, my polling unit, somebody came there with 1 million, and he was offering us 50,000, and we refused to take the money. And those people who took the money didn't vote for their party. So clearly, we need to state that. So that happened, but it didn't affect the overall outcome of the elections. But what was intriguing this morning, and I witnessed it, with my colleague, we got to where we wanted to get a vehicle to come back to Abuja. To come back to Lagos. I keep mentioning Abuja, so that we can go back to our various destinations. And then there was jubilation in the whole city. Everybody was happy, and you never would expect that anything can go wrong. So we were by the park trying to hire a vehicle to come to Lagos, when in the midst of the jubilations, some guys, some thugs came and ran to where we were and the vehicle that we had already hired, and tried to struggle to get to take charge of the vehicle. And we're just 3 of us in the vehicle. And then the next thing, there was a gunshot fired towards our direction, and everybody dispersed.
Oh, wow.
So I told the driver, let us run. So as he was about to move the vehicle, that was when one of the thugs came and started struggling the vehicle with us. And then my colleague's bag fell off, and we couldn't retrieve the bag, and we drove off. So he obviously was, being dragged by the vehicle, so he left, and then we drove off. And this happened in a place called Aregbe Park, opposite the ADC secretariat, So then we went away and told the driver to come back and see if he can retrieve the box. And by the time he walked back and he left the vehicle with us, he walked back, and the bag or the box was no longer there, but there was that whole area was bloodied, where we were parked. And then it begs the question as to what could have gone wrong,
Indeed.
Could it be that?
Yeah. And I want to get back to you on that, because there's so much to discuss about the role of security agencies during the election itself. But you pointed out something that I found very interesting, which is also what I sense is the general mood, that on election day things went as smoothly as they could, save for 1 or 2 discrepancies here and there. And Justice, I want to bring you on here now. Is that also your assessment? Because people are actually giving INEC a pat on the back for this outing. Do you give them one too?
Well, I will hold back my flower for INEC for now, because over time we've seen something like this play off. When the main election, the 2027, is coming forward, that is when I will give them their flower. But for now, my confidence for INEC, or giving them their flower, I will say in a bouquet of 10, I will just give them 5 for now and hold on 5 until 2027. I can return the remaining 5 to them.
Listen, if you follow INEC's antecedents, pretty positive they wouldn't mind half a score for now. But it's a good point that you've made, that we do need to look at how this particular election sets us up for what's coming in 2027. And that's why I'd like to bring you back on, because we're building up to several issues that arose during the course of the election. One of the interesting points I found out from was when the governor who won, Governor Adeleke, was giving his post-victory press conference. He mentioned that he was very happy with the conduct of the people who came out to vote, and he was also happy with the president, and he reaffirmed his endorsement of President Tinubu for a second term. And a lot of commentators found that interesting. Is that what happens now in opposition states, where the person who's trying to get re-elected has to sort of endorse what's going on at federal level so as not to have the weight of federal might imposed on the state? Is that a play that people are moving?
I found the remarks by the governor and governor-elect quite uncharitable. He didn't win that election. It was the Osun people who won that election for him. So the victory is not his victory. It's the victory of Osun people, and you don't treat Osun people with that level of disdain, because those votes don't belong to him. If we look at Osun State historically, in 2011, Osun State went to AC, that was Nuhu Ribadu, with over 1 million votes. In 2015, PDP was in power. Osun State went to Muhammadu Buhari. In 2019, APC was in power. Osun State went to PDP. In 2023, APC was in power. Osun State went to PDP. So Osun is a very dynamic state, coupled with the fact that they've got a lot of big national, ex-national bigwigs in Osun State. So you talk about the likes of the former Minister of Police Affairs, Patricia Ete is there, Oluwole Oke has been playing nationally, Yola Omishore plays nationally as well. There are a lot of Olagunsoye Inola was military administrator. So there are a lot of big names in Osun State who have different interests. And now, if the people, despite the fact that all these gladiators came against you, they gathered against you as a sitting governor, and they pooled resources, pooled the federal might. Every local government in Osun State had one commissioner of police supervising that election. They had 15,000 policemen on ground. They had assistant commissioners of police on ground, AIG and DIGs. Then we've not even talked about the National Civil Defense Corps, who were on ground to muzzle that election and get it from you. And then the people resisted. People died because of you. And then you now wake up and say the party that they rejected, right? You are now going to take their mandates and give it to that party. I think it's very uncharitable statement to make, and taking the people's will for granted. And I've seen some comments from Osun people telling him and also warning him to say that, hey, those votes that we gave to you don't belong to you. Osun's votes are Osun's votes. They are not APC votes. And come 2027 election, I hope we'll see what happens if they are going to surprise him. But I don't think that for a party who have rejected the ruling party in your state and in your favor, the best way to say thank you and be grateful to them is not for you to reward them with that kind of statement. It is it is disdainful to me, to be honest.
And you've made several good points about what the people came out to do and how they stood by their votes and so on. And Justice, this is something I want to bring you on because young people actually, kept vigil, if you like. We're monitoring the vote count. They were there. It is something that we've always encouraged people to do. You just don't stop at the ballot. You have to follow through every single step of the way in the electoral process. How impressed were you by their conduct, and how can we replicate this in more elections?
Oh, you can see the atmosphere that when the people are happy, it shows that the people's mandate actually reflected what INEC announced. Now, we've always advocated for people to vote and don't go. Stand till your vote is counted. And we can do it peacefully. You don't need to be violent about it. It's just to be present. Even if it takes INEC 3 days to count the vote, people can be there. Of course, we experienced something like this in 2020 during the NSAS. People were outside for days. So is it to defend our vote that we cannot be outside? In fact, what just happened has restored the confidence of Nigerians that, yet, our vote actually counts. Before now, there's this argument that between the youth, they're trying to discourage people, trying to make them feel that, oh, your vote doesn't count. Don't worry. They've written the result already. But with what's happened now, I think now many Nigerians can now see and witness that if you vote and stand, defend your vote, watch your votes counted, your vote will actually count. Because if our vote doesn't count, why would they spend millions of nairas to buy vote? Why would they bring 1 million naira to polling unit? Why would they give people 15,000 naira? Why would 15 APC governors wear Ashwebi to Osun State? Why would the Senate president, the number 3 citizen, go to Osun State? If our vote doesn't count, it is because the vote counts. And I'm happy that this is happening in my lifetime, in our generation, that the young ones are waking up to defend their votes. You know, when we talk about defend vote, they try to misinterpret it. Defending our vote doesn't mean that we'll carry gun, carry cutlass, or be violent about it. No, it can be peacefully done, just like you're seeing in the video. Everybody will stand there. We watch you count it. Is it not our vote? Is there any sin in me standing to watch you count my vote? We will stand and watch you count it. And when you are done counting it, and we know we count it together, if my candidates win, I will celebrate. If my candidate doesn't win, it means that my candidate is not what's winning. So whoever wins will celebrate. You can see the atmosphere in the country. Everybody is happy. The election happened only in Osun, but the celebration cuts across the country. It means that something was done right, and that thing that was done right must repeat itself again in a larger scale. I think it's a right step. We must do it, and we'll continue to do it and get better in doing it. Thank you.
And Justice, I want to follow up on that because as you mentioned, this election is just for Osun. In 2027, there will be elections across the country. And we're encouraging people to watch the votes, watch them count and follow the whole process. But where do we draw the line between citizens protecting their votes by following the process and perhaps putting themselves in potentially dangerous situations, knowing what can happen in combustible situations like collation periods during elections?
Yeah, that is where the peaceful demonstration comes in. You know, when defending your vote, you don't go to polling units with a weapon or cutlass or anything to fight. And this is another place that our security agencies come in. You saw what happened in Osun State. The police, sent more than 15,000 policemen, commissioners in every local government and all that. If that is widely done in nationwide, and we have adequate security protecting the citizens, the voters, and the electoral officers, there's no reason for violence. Of course, we have more peaceful citizens than any thugs that will come in. I don't think one thug can overpower 30 or 40 peaceful citizens. No, that cannot happen. So we, as much as we advise people to defend their vote, we also advise them to be peaceful about it. You don't need to be aggressive. Of course, the people counting the votes, the INEC officials or the electoral officers, they are also citizens like us. So we just want you to do the right thing. I think that's not much to ask. I think that should answer the question.
No, yeah, I mean, it's not much to ask at all. And Martin, we've talked about people watching their votes. We've talked about INEC. Let's look at the role of security agencies. And you were already coming to that not too long ago. They have come in for some criticism in the lead up to the elections, and even during election day and post-election day. We know that the security architecture of this country is controlled from the federal level. But going into a general election, using Osun as the blueprint, how can we ensure fairness nationwide, especially when the security agencies are involved?
So there are two things that whenever security is deployed in an election, especially when it has to do with opposition, there are two things that always play out. It's either the security agencies are there to look away when they are supposed to act, or they are there to intimidate when they are supposed to protect. So in Osun's case, for example, you're running an election against the ruling party, and then you had the presence of that heavy presence of security in the state. All that message was essentially passing was that, we are here to do a show of force. In fact, there was a demonstration, one of the days that it was like a show of force day in Osun State prior to the elections, where all the security agencies came out and they were doing, parading and showing force in that regard. It's elections, it's not war, right? So in the case where you have that kind of show of force and you're showing that level of force, you're basically sending a message to the people that if you come out, anything can happen to you and you're not safe. So that mental safety is also different from the physical safety. The idea that you feel safe is different from being safe in itself. Indeed. So when people then see the level of security forces deployed, they can feel scared, threatened, and they don't want to come out to vote. Because ordinarily, we know that with law enforcement agencies, they can be trigger happy in most cases or in some cases, and then we've seen the antecedent. So people just tend to be careful. However, one of the biggest things that outcome of this was that citizens were now made to understand that these police are your friend, regardless of what it is. Just come out and vote. So they felt some level of protection, and then they came out. So this police itself, especially the Nigerian police force, must be able to conduct themselves and show that themselves in a way that they are unbiased in an election, then citizens will come out. And I also commend whoever did the security architecture of these elections, because what happened was that they suspended the commissioner of police, not official suspension, but they told him to step aside and brought in a different commissioner of police for the elections. The same thing they did with the REC. They stepped the REC aside and brought in different RECs from across the state. So therefore, that brought a level of impartiality in the entire electoral process.
It's good point you made with that. Of course, we keep reiterating that this is one election, and to replicate that at scale is going to be a bit of a challenge. But let's look at how much more the citizens can get involved. We've seen people, like we've seen in the videos, we've heard Justice Crack talk about it, but I also want to look at from the point of people using something in their hands to hold institutions like the police accountable, their phones. We saw like a lot of the videos that have come up have been generated from people recording with their phones. Do you think that's also put the security agencies at alert that, look, whatever we do here will be documented for posterity? How important is it for us to carry this going forward as well?
So one of the biggest things, like you rightly said, is technology, right? Which is one of the things what we deployed to the Osun elections. Yeah. So we have an app called iReport INEC, and that's app essentially documents incidents, reports early warning signs, and also gives citizens the opportunity to snap election results and post, and also compute results and post, so that if IREF fails, in the event that IREF fails, you have a backup collation or reviewing portal where people can basically see and view results and know that this was what happened during the election. So essentially, technology plays a big role. And one of the things that we also discovered using the app, iReport INEC, essentially, which is on Play Store and Google Store, is that people reported incidences that were false, and people reported incidences that were true. How did we know that people reported false incidences? So when they report an incident that is not correct, what we did was that we verified within 5 minutes, because the app has a verification mode where you can verify within that area to be sure that this kind of thing happens. So yes, when you have that kind of device, or you have that kind of app and other apps that are probably springing up and that will come up again before the elections, it puts INEC in check. It also puts security agencies in check, because whatever you do can be documented and it can be escalated. I mean, we are in this country where some law enforcement officers went to Canada to go and apply for visas, and they were denied because they said Nigerian police was a killing agency or a murderous agency. So at the end of the day, we need to understand that whatever our police officers do, except they don't have a tomorrow, and they also don't want their children to have a tomorrow, that the world is watching. And that's what the Father Husi, or what the senator who has done, has basically called upon himself, because I've seen that Amnesty International is going to blacklist and name and shame him in over 200 countries. That is enormous. So what people do locally, they need to understand that their local impact has global consequences. And we need to behave in such a way that we Nigerians are not in a bubble of our own. We are in a global community that whatever happens here will definitely resonate and have effect in other places. So we need to be very careful, both law enforcement agents and even INEC and even our government officials.
Quite like that. Local impact, global consequences, very important. Now, Justice, I want to bring you in here and let's talk about the political actors, the political parties. And you already mentioned one of them from the election, the senator who was caught on video making threats, which he later came to deny and said he spoke them, he didn't mean them literally, denials and so on. Did Osun show us that perhaps our political actors and parties are behaving better, or was there more concern for what might come next year? Justice? If Justice can't hear me, I will ask you the question, Martin. The political parties, and you already mentioned the senator from the opposing party who came out and made those threats. Like you mentioned, Amnesty International have put a notice on him. were they generally better behaved this time around, or do we have more to be concerned for next?
We have to.
All right, so we're gonna get Justice here from Abuja, who's joining us virtually, of course. And I was just asking you, Justice, if you can hear me properly now, about the role of our political
Yes, I'm
actors
with you.
and political parties in this particular Osun election. You heard Martin talk about one of the actors and how Amnesty International has their eye on him now. But do you think that they were better behaved this time around, or do we have more to be concerned about moving forward ahead of the general election?
Yes, Nigerians need to brace for impact, because if a state election could attract 16 governors and the Senate president to go there, what are they going there to do? Do they have a polling unit there? Are they going to vote? What are they going there to do? For the fact they went there, that means they had a plan either to influence or do whatever. I like what Martin said in the use of technology. This is where the young people come in. We need to record these people, record their art, put everything out there so that the world will see them for who they are. For every action they take, we put it out there, because you cannot. People like Hope Uzodinma, for example, you left Imo State, going to Osun State to go and tell Davido he should prepare to employ his uncle. What happened to your state? Go back to your state. It is Imo people that elected you. What are you doing in Osun State? Monday Okwebulo, you went there to tell them that he want to bath a dance. What's your business in Osun State? I understand you guys are in the same political party. You should be worried about your state and the people who elected you in your state, and leave Osun State alone. For the fact that all of them gangs to go there where there should be and all that is a thing of concern, and Nigerians need to brace for impact. If they could do that for a state, only God knows what will happen in the general election. And Nigerians need to, we need to find a better way to hold them accountable by using technology, even if it's using the Ray-Ban glasses, using phones, if it's possible. I will even advise, if it's possible, to find a way to install a CCTV camera in every polling unit so that we can watch, also monitor their actions. It's important to put it out there so that the international community can see them, because most of those politicians, their children are abroad. They send their children out and they come here to influence all those bad behavior here. So that cannot be tolerated, and we should hold them accountable in every legal means possible.
And I want to take you back to an earlier point we were making, Justice, when I asked you to sort of grade INEC on their outing in this particular election. Justice, if you can hear me, I was going to ask you about grading INEC properly. I know you mentioned you only give, in a bouquet of 10 flowers, you're only going to give them 5. But now let's look at INEC's performance a little closely. There were still complaints about logistics. They performed fairly okay, according to most commentators, but there were still complaints about logistics, processes, the IRF platform. How much of these issues can they resolve before 2027? Because I know we say 2027, but those elections are in January. It's like 5 months away. They're really, really close. Is this a cause for major concern, or do we think that they can take this template out of Osun and scale it nationwide and do better?
It is quite painful that in 2026 we are talking about moving logistics, moving paper here and there, when in Nigeria we have BVN, we have NIN, we have the only practical thing the PVC does is to vote. We should be talking about electronic voting. That alone will eradicate or take away this whole logistic of moving papers around. I'm talking about IRF. You know, as a Nigerian, we are conversant with this word glitch. We heard it a lot in 2023, and now we are hearing glitch again. In my own opinion, I'm beginning to feel that this is an intentional act to pause, or will I say, to once in a while pause the vote or the upload to get people's reaction and all that, because you can't tell me that all those little fintech companies and those little banks that work in rural area could get network, their POS work, and an organization as big as INEC, National Electoral Commission, will be complaining of glitch of election that did not just happen today. The election was not planned yesterday. For the 4 years ago, when the last election was coming, they know that this election will come. So INEC have enough time. There's no reason, there's no excuse. They have enough time to prepare. They have enough, so they don't just stop. Let's stop this behavior of like the election is impromptu. It's not impromptu. They have enough time, so there is no excuse for any logistic problem. I saw in one of the videos they use Okada to bring electoral material, using public transport to bring electoral material. How can you move such sensitive information or material with public transportation? You are making yourself vulnerable for thugs or for all those bad actors to, take advantage of that. There's enough time to plan this. It seems that they are not showing enough seriousness in this, or maybe it's an intentional act to just jeopardize things, unless that's what they want to tell us. But if that is not the case, INEC still have enough time. Being, of course, the Osun State election have shown them, they've seen that, there was glitch in this. They can fix it now before the 2027, before this January. We're talking about January, is not far. So they have enough time to fix it. And if they don't fix it, then we Nigerians can now say that, this is an intentional act. But if they don't want to give us the impression that it's an intentional act, then we have no choice but to still repeat the cycle again.
All right, Justice, again, just also to get your thoughts on the activities to get your thoughts on the activities of security agents. Justice, if you can hear me properly, we're trying to get Justice back on from our Abuja studios, but I will then come to Martin here, and let's look at the role of civil society organizations like yours, and what you're doing as well with the app you've developed, I Report INEC, for example. How much more of those should we have all around and across to ensure that, look, when the process is happening, citizens are engaged all through, from when they vote to when it's collated to even post-election, because we saw what happened to you after the election as you tried to get away from the state. How much more of that should we be seeing?
So civil society has done very well in terms of interpretation of data. Most of the things you see online, the interpretation of data were scripts from IREF portal. So that helped citizens to understand where the votes is, using OCR technology to scrape the data and then present it easily. Because, if you look at IREV, you're just looking at IREV. Yeah. You're just seeing results coming in and all that. So what civil society organizations have done, like Yaga, Data Fights, CJID and co, has been that they then interpreted that data in a readable and more understanding format. For our organization, what we have done is that we are saying that instead of scraping and relying so much on data, why can't citizens have their own IREV portal, which is what iReport INEC is? So as opposed to waiting for information to get or data to get on the IREV portal, it can actually get to the citizens portal as well. So for instance, yesterday while we were waiting for results to trickle in, the first result that came out came into our portal 16 minutes before the first result got into the IREF portal, the INEC portal. So what therefore it means is that if we had the spread across the states and every citizen in all the polling units reported results, we wouldn't have had that tension and suspense that happened for 2 to 3 hours where INEC did not
where there was a glitch.
Where there was a glitch.
Martin, it's important that you're sharing this with us, and I want to thank you very much for the work that you do and for coming on the show today. Thank you as well to Justice Crack Chidebere, our other guests, talking about the Osun elections. And the lesson here, obviously, is not just about who won the election, but that clearly when citizens show up, we can actually build our democracy and be better. We've got more for you here on Rubbing Minds after this break. So once again, for joining us on Rubbing Minds this Sunday, very interesting and insightful conversation about the Osun elections. Another conversation that a lot of people have been on about has been the saga with the P-Square brothers and the fallout with their manager Jude and all of those things happening. And we had a very interesting conversations with two industry insiders not too long ago who brought us a lot of education about what has happened, what could be happening, and how as a consumer group we can be better with organizing ourselves around topics like this. I think you'll enjoy it, so we're bringing it back for you again today.
Secretary to all the accounts. The newspapers published it. Look at it. It's in Punch, Tribune, Vanguard. All of them published it. He was making a U-turn. Okay. I am a signatory to the account. But what is he doing with it here again on social media? Tell me, is this person normal? You tell me. Please, let's continue watching.
Next thing, everyone demanded they wanted the back end. I persuaded Jude to give it to me. He now said it's going to take 3.5 months. I started feeling somehow. If I tell you to give me your segment of account, few minutes, even with your app, you bring it. Tell me 3.5 months. So that's how long it will take. I still play ignorant. Waited for the 3.5 months. Walked up to him after 3.5 months. We kept on doing like this. I walked up to Paul. Paul, what is going on? Say, Peter, don't tell you, I don't know anything about this. This whole thing where you talk about.
And the Oscar goes to the chief manipulator. He said, I told him that it's going to take 3.5 months to send the catalog. Please watch. On the 16th of October 2022, Peter called me that he wanted Square Records catalog, backends, and accounting, which I called Lex Record to make provision for. And he sent it to me later in the evening and said, hi bro, royalty statement, we can provide logs on request. I forwarded this to Peter, which shows exactly the amounts of money as an accounting from Q3 2012 all the way to Q2 2022 in question. So he now called me back to say, no, what they are asking for is not accounting, but the back ends that will show the streamings and whatever that they needed to see. And he told you people that it took 3.5 months after doing like this to send it to him. Abi, please watch. So as you can see, 6 days later, on the 22nd of October, I called Peter to tell him that I have received the back ends. He now said, I beg, send that P-Square report to booking at psquare.world.com, 22nd October 2022. So as you can see, the logs was sent to booking at psquareworld.com on the same date of 22nd October 2022. And if you come up here, you will see it shows that it was downloaded on the same day, 22nd October 2022.
Well, at the start of the show, I did tell you about family feud-driven entertainment drama on Robin Minds today, and that was a bit of what we've been experiencing as a country through the week. You're welcome back to the show. And of course, the renewed public conversation around P-Square has once again brought questions about money, ownership, royalties, management, and the business structures behind successful music partnerships to the forefront, rather than focusing on personal disagreements, though, between the Okoye brothers, or attempting to determine who's right or who's wrong. What we'll do this afternoon is use the situation as a starting point to examine the broader business of music in the country. How is a successful song actually monetized? Who owns the music? Who owns the recording? How are royalties shared between artists, songwriters, producers, publishers, labels, and other rights holders? What happens when artists are also business partners, family members, or members of a group? For an industry that has grown into one of Nigeria's most significant creative exports, there is still considerable confusion among artists and the public about intellectual property, publishing, masters, royalties, contracts, and revenue sharing. And what we'll do is bring in qualified people, entertainment lawyers and music industry professionals together to break down the business of music in as simple terms as they possibly can. And the aim today is not to dissect P-Square's private affairs, but to use a situation that Nigerians are already discussing to help us all understand how the music business should work and what artists need to know before their music becomes successful. Joining us on Robin Minds this afternoon, we have Mojonyo Oluwa Adekunle, a legal and business strategist in studio. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Very good to have you here. Tokbe Salami joining us virtually. He's an entertainment lawyer, I believe. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. First of all, I just want to ask both of you, have you been able to catch your breath this week?
Absolutely. I mean, this happens more often than not. So
Really?
it's not that uncommon.
Okay.
Actually.
What about you, Tokwe?
Well, I would never lose my breath. I can't eat.
I mean, fair enough. Listen, there's a lot to get into here, but you both have legal backgrounds, which is very important. What I want to know is, as we've seen in what was played earlier, a lot of documents were made public, things that we probably should never see, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think, and I understand the EFCC has gotten involved in this case before, we understand there have been cases in court, are any of the things that have been shared publicly prejudicial to ongoing cases, do you think?
It really, so far, not everything has been, they've been referring to documents, they've not necessarily published, so to speak. But so far, depending on the level where the investigations are, usually those investigations, if they are already in court documents are public documents. But if they are still in an investigation, these documents should not be peddled on social media as it is. They should not be litigating this on social media, actually, not yet.
Not in the court of public opinion.
Not yet.
Feel like. So, talk about in the P-Square situation, Peter made several claims about how money, royalties, and so on were handled without deciding who was right or wrong, really. What immediately stands out to you from a corporate governance perspective?
It's the need for structure. And aside from structure, it also goes to the need to understand, the essence of the business and the need for the business to be properly regulated, not by outsiders, but by experts, yeah? And when it comes to, corporate governance, particularly with regards to the creative industry, we are still, struggling. Of course, some of us have been advocating for higher and better, laws, regulations, guidelines, as the case may be, and definitely would always do that until we achieve the aim, and the aim is to have a sustainable, creative industry. But left to me, the P-Square, the P-Square saga, let me use the word saga, is just an indictment into the weakness of our corporate governance. Thank you.
Let's start from even the basics. So 3 people go into a successful music business together. What should the legal and perhaps financial structure even look like from day one?
Primarily, to start a business, you should have, in this case where you have several parties,
yes, and
at this scale, you should have a limited liability company at the bare minimum. And what that to look like is that, what that does is everybody has, the entity sort of separates everybody's equity. You know who owns what and who has what. You understand what your roles are. And typically, once you register, that's just the first thing. Then you have documentation that speaks to what your relationship should be like. What are the expectations? How much am I bringing into this? How much are you bringing into this? What is expected of you? In the event that we want to split, what happens to what we have? How much? When do we start collecting money from this business? How do we resolve issues? Who has the rights to do what? So that's at the registration level, yes, and then the documentation level, yes. With regards to the creative business, it's a bit of a different peculiar situation, because there's the business entity and then there's the IP entity as well. Typically, people model that up together, and usually it's not very advisable. It's not the best practices. So usually there's the day-to-day running of, say, somebody that is booking the day-to-day running of the label or whichever business entity you decide to register. There's the booking of the shows, there's the day-to-day run, and then there is the IP entity entirely. There are 2 separate things that should be separated with documentation. So, of course, that level of detail in registering, documentation, and dividing what needs to be divided and not lumping it all together is very, very important, at the bare minimum, at least.
So we're using the P-Square situation as just as an example, as a backdrop for all of these conversations, because for the average Nigerian, all these terms can be confusing. We're not music business insiders like you are. And I want to say, so we've heard accusations from Peter or Mr. P accusing Jude of taking a certain percentage. And then the question is, well, wasn't that agreed in a contract? Why is it now any of our business? what is the right thing here?
So typically at the beginning, they should have had either a partnership agreement or a shareholder agreement that speaks to who gets what and what percentage it is. Yes, in the registration, we see that somebody has this percent of shares and all of that, but that does not. We still need to bring it to the granular level of detail as to what is expected and who owns what and who has the power to manage finances. And aside from even that, the accounting structures also need to be in place. One person cannot unilaterally have the power to spend money and decide, oh, you take this, you take that. Typically, everybody should have access to accounts. It's the directors and shareholders' right to have periodical access to financial accounting, as well in music business. Of course, they should have access to streaming logs and details, everything. All the primary thing here is transparency. And then with regards to accounting, there also ought to be an independent party who is able to manage your accounts. There should be audits, periodic audits from time to time. So it's not I'm doing this, I'm hiding it. No, it's open to all because they are all shareholders and directors in an organization. And that transparency should be the most key thing.
It's a great point that you've made because we've seen that there have been deviations in certain cases that have been made public. And Tokpa, I just want to follow up with you on this. Per what we've just heard, is it a crime then if these things are not revealed to all parties? What exactly are the legal implications of these sorts of things?
I mean, so far you guys are in business together, it's just natural that everything revealable is revealed. Yeah, that is the essence of business. That is the essence of partnership, and of course, that is the yardstick to measuring or to measurement. To measuring growth, as the case may be. So for me, if Mr. A is saying, "Oh, why is it that he's just finding out right now? Why is it that he was just getting this document right now?" Meaning that if he never spoke, he might or he would not have gotten it. Yeah, it is a grave indictment into the entire system, into the entire business, into the entire structure, and of course, it also comes to the question of the knowledge of all the parties in the contract, all the parties in the partnership. Trust me, you cannot give what you don't have. Once you know that, okay, there is a possibility of that knowledge gap, all you need to do is just to seek for help by speaking to professionals, whether professionals will come in as consultants or they will come in on a day-to-day basis. But still, it's an indictment, not just in the structure alone, but of course in that principle of knowledge as well. Thank you.
And Tokwe makes a really good point about how it's an indictment on what currently exists. And when I asked you both if any of this was surprising to you, you both said, no, this is a regular Sunday for us, to be honest. And that's where I want to take this conversation to, because it appears that the knowledge gap that exists when creatives go into the business of their creative endeavors is still quite wide. What are music industry insiders and music industry execs doing to close that gap and ensure that people, as best as can be, are fairly treated?
Well, to be honest, in the past decade, information has been a lot. There's been more symposiums that talk about these things. There's been more access to information. I mean, you have AI. All you need to do really is just to type in there, and and I also think that one of the challenges that we have is people do not think is necessary. A lot of creatives don't exactly see themselves as business entities just yet. They are still thinking about, oh, I'm a creative, I do music, but you're doing a business. There is the business of music that you also need to be abreast with. If you want to do this, you need to understand both the creative aspect of it and the business of it. And I think that's something that a lot of creatives need to also try to educate themselves. You can go online and do a course. You can get professionals, as Tope said. You could engage a lawyer. You could engage an accountant. You could even just there are a lot of these business courses you could quickly take that can just help you have context to the business of your craft. So there are two different things. And if you don't understand the business you're probably here for pro bono, just do free music and move on.
And that's interesting because, and I will get back to the question of percentages in just a bit, but you've also raised a very important point here. But I do want to say this. We've seen the accusations that Mr. P said about his elder brother Jude taking a certain percentage, I think it was like 40% or something like of that nature. You have mentioned about the importance of contracts and setting these things from scratch, but obviously certain steps might have been missed in this particular case. How then can we fix that particular kind of situation? Is it right to abrogate yourself a certain level of percentage and then settle it in-house because we're all family members?
Oh no. So yes, they didn't have contract in the beginning, and the next best time to have thought about putting that in writing was when it started to become an issue. If we agreed that the order of the day is for us to just share anyhow, and that's okay with everybody as of then, and the moment it starts to become an issue, you need to put it in writing. So at any point in time when you come to the knowledge that this is a problem, I think the next best time is to put it right here in writing and agree. Now, what happens is business does not belong to you. You are a stakeholder in that business. You cannot decide that, I will take this for myself. The CAMA, the Corporate Affairs, CAMA 2020 is the governing body for all companies, and it provides that all directors need to be transparent in how they govern the affairs of the company, right? So you can't just unilaterally make a decision. It has to be open to everybody. You have to disclose any interests you have, financial interests or business interests you have in any of the entities that with all the other stakeholders in your business in the entity. So no, you can't just do things by yourself unilaterally. And yes, the next best time to take out the agreement is now. But now that you know, it's the best time.
I want to bring in Tokwe at this point. So when this happens now, where we have a situation where a certain percentage has been shared, I want to understand the difference here. As a manager, where is this percentage even coming from? Is it from music sales? Is it from event bookings? Is it from royalties? What do they have rights to or not?
Thank you very much. So everything is dependent on the agreement between parties. Yeah, there are certain agreements that they would all agree that management receives just monies made from shows, and there are some the management or the manager would have to receive 360. Everything is also dependent on the type of contribution or the level of contribution of the supposed, manager or management. Yeah. So the percentages of management must always be subject to the type of agreement, entered into. There are two words here that over time, with my own experience, I've realized that these two words usually cause problem, particularly in agreements, and particularly if the agreement is such that the parties in the agreement do not really understand, how these things work. And these words are net and gross. Yeah. Everyone is saying, oh, this person is receiving 40%. That 40% might be that. The 40% might be gross. The 40% might be net. When it is net, it means certain expenses, have been recouped.
Okay.
When it is gross, it means, from the main source. Yeah. So at the end of the day, I don't talk on certain things when, the clearer
The
or
facts
when
are not
the
clear.
when the facts are not 100%, presented.
All right, Tokwe, sorry to cut you in there, but thank you very much for your thoughts today. Tokwe Salami is an entertainment lawyer. Mojoyin Oluwa Adekunle, she is a legal and business strategist. Thank you so much for your thoughts and helping us all understand a bit of what has been going on with the entertainment business and music business in this case, particularly with the P Square drama as the backdrop here in Nigeria. You've been watching Robin Minds. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I'm Osato Edokbayi. See you soon.